A well-known character on Long Island Medium, Theresa Caputo, is currently dealing with a different kind of difficulty. After becoming involved in a business venture with her ex-husband, Larry Caputo, she finds herself in a challenging predicament. Larry told him, "I'll kick you out of the company if you don't follow my instructions this time, since I now own all of the money and this business." Theresa is extremely disturbed by this severe threat. She must now decide whether to heed Larry's threat or to courageously turn Larry over to the authorities. In an effort to uphold justice and her own interests, Theresa is now attempting to make decisions using her own judgment and bravery. Theresa Caputo had dedicated her life to helping people communicate with the spirits of their loved ones, providing hundreds of families with solace and closure. Her work had been founded on intuition, trust, and a sense of justice that went beyond the spiritual world. She was well known for her warmth and empathy. Theresa was suddenly involved in a whole different kind of challenge, one that called for all the bravery she had ever mustered and more. A few weeks prior, it had started. Her ex-husband, Larry Caputo, had come to her with a demand, or rather a proposal. They had made the decision to work together on a small business project that would leverage Theresa's notoriety and Larry's administrative abilities. It initially appeared to be an opportunity to collaborate once more in a secure, formal setting. However, the situation rapidly deteriorated. Theresa entered the workplace one day to find Larry waiting for her, his severe face chilling her to the core. With a low but menacing voice, he threatened to kick you out of the company if you didn't follow instructions this time, since I now own all of the money and this business. Theresa felt her heart sink. Since their past had been convoluted, she had anticipated friction, but she had never anticipated such a straightforward and vicious threat. Her chest felt the pressure of his words. She considered giving in for an instant. The simpler route would be compliance. The argument would end, at least momentarily, if she would just nod, smile, and do as he said. However, Theresa knew in her heart that following out of fear would undermine her integrity, independence, and sense of justice, all of which she held dear. Theresa sat by herself in her living room that evening, the walls long shadowed by the gentle glow of her lamps. Over the years, she reflected on the people she had assisted, the families she had consoled, and the innumerable occasions she had inspired others to find their bravery. She then came to the crucial realization that she could no longer merely assist others in finding bravery. She needed to call it upon herself. Theresa made up her mind the following morning. She refused to abide with Larry's warnings. She refused to live her life in fear. She was aware that she needed to behave sensibly, though. She needed allies, proof, and a plan before she could jump headfirst into conflict. Theresa started recording everything. Financial documents, emails, messages, or anything else that demonstrated Larry's threats and manipulations. She spoke with her attorney about the potential for reporting Larry to the police. She even confided in a close friend, who emphasized that courage was the resolve to act in spite of fear rather than the lack of it. As the days went by, the office stress became intolerable. Theresa was no longer intimidated, and Larry seemed to sense that. He started acting more erratically and making more pointed threats. However, Theresa maintained her composure and concentrated on assembling her proof and getting ready for the day when she would face him, not in rage, but with justice. The time has finally come. Theresa made sure her lawyer was there and that all of the paperwork had been securely backed up before inviting Larry to a meeting at the office. Theresa inhaled deeply as Larry started to threaten her once more. She gently laid forth her case, explaining how his threats were against the law and morality. With unrelenting determination, she then threatened to call the police if he did not stop his deceptive behavior. Theresa's power and careful planning took Larry by surprise, and he faltered. She was no longer the woman who would cower in fear, he recognized for the first time. Theresa had reversed the situation with her bravery and wit. The authorities examined the evidence in the days that followed, and Larry was held accountable for his crimes. Despite being shocked by the experience, Theresa came out stronger than before. She had experienced betrayal, terror, and uncertainty, but she had refused to be silent. More significantly, she had taken back her authority, demonstrating that bravery and moral character were far more important than conformity or ease. With a fresh sense of purpose, Theresa went back to her spiritual work. She frequently told this story to her clients, not as a story of revenge, but rather as a lesson in maintaining your integrity when everything around you appears bent on bringing you down. She reminded herself and them that real courage is demonstrated by facing challenges head-on with clarity, wisdom, and an unwavering sense of justice, not by avoiding them. Therefore, despite danger and anxiety, Theresa Caputo remained a shining example of courage, wisdom, and the unwavering strength of the human spirit, not simply as a conduit between the living and the dead. But Long Island was experiencing a wet Sunday afternoon, the kind of weather that seemed to reflect the weight on people's emotions. The Long Island medium, Theresa Caputo, had just finished setting up her room for yet another private reading. The atmosphere was warm but quiet, with softly flickering candles, a subtle sage aroma, and a serene, welcoming vibe. She always said that even before the family entered, the spirits communicated with her before a potent session. A mother named Angela and her 3 children, Michael, Sophia, and Daniel, came that day as a family of 4. Less than a year had passed after the death of their father, Anthony. A diligent man with a huge heart and a big grin, he had been the family's rock. The family has been having financial, emotional, and most importantly, spiritual difficulties since his death. Their expressions were a mix of uncertainty and hope as they stepped into Theresa's territory. The oldest, Michael, carried himself rigidly, as if unsure whether he believed any of this. Before the session even started, Sophia, the middle child, was crying and holding her father's old watch tightly. With his shoulders slumped and the weight of loss pressing down on him, Daniel, the youngest, simply gazed at the ground. Theresa gave them a hearty welcome. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Theresa. You're safe here, even though I know this isn't easy for you. Everything that occurs today is about healing and love. All right?" Angela wiped a tear from her cheek and nodded rapidly. "We simply need to know that he's all right, that he is somehow still with us." Theresa closed her eyes and focused on the energy surrounding her as she sat down. Her hands shot up in her typical animated manner in a matter of seconds. All right, calm down. Your dad has already come forward. He has such a powerful personality that it seems like he never stops talking." She mimicked the way she was receiving his spirit by laughing. The kids glanced at each other. This sounded just like their father. First, Theresa looked at Michael. "Dear, your father wants me to speak with you. He claims that despite your best efforts to remain tough and contain everything, he sees you laying awake at night and gazing at the ceiling, wondering how you're going to measure up to his expectations. You don't have to be me, son," he says. "Simply be yourself. I brought you up to lead from the heart, rather than out of fear." Michael's mouth quivered. Trying not to cry, he blinked a lot before he cracked. "He used to say that to me all the time. I always heard him say that I shouldn't be afraid of life." Theresa patted his hand tenderly as she reached over. "You see? He's pleased with you. He doesn't want his burden to fall on you. He wants you to be independent." After that, Theresa faced Sophia. She gestured toward the watch she was holding. "Your dad is asking, why do you constantly get my old broken watch?" "Oh my God, honey." He's emotional, but he's also laughing. "You wear it like armor," he says. "It's as if you believe you won't lose him if you hang on to it." Sophia now broke down in tears. "I don it each day. The only thing that gives me the impression that he is still near me is this." Theresa's gaze grew softer. "He wants you to know that you can sense him without that watch. He's at your side already. That's him, honey, whenever you feel those sporadic goosebumps or when the lights in your room flicker when you're crying. He is informing you that he has not left." By now, the mother, Angela, was trembling and clutching her lap. With a more solemn tone, Theresa turned to face her. "The hospital room is being shown to me by your husband. You blame yourself," he adds, "for not noticing the signals and getting him there sooner." Angela started crying right away. "I keep thinking that perhaps the doctor would still be here if I had called him sooner. Then Theresa leaned over.
Stop, he says.
I had time. He's giving me the impression that his heart went out. You couldn't have changed it. He wants you to know that when he died, he was pain-free. He was here one moment, and then he was at peace. Additionally, he expresses gratitude by saying, "Thank you for holding my hand. I appreciate you whispering your love for me since it was what got me home." Angela's children grabbed her hands tightly as her cries filled the room. Theresa then went to the youngest, Daniel, who had been silent the entire time. Her voice grew softer. "Your dad showed me you sitting by yourself in your room, painting, honey. You sketch superheroes," he says. "You don't have to depict him as a hero wearing a cape, he wants me to say. You are the hero to him. When no one else can make your mother smile, it's you. It's your ridiculous jokes that keep the family smiling. You save them more than you'll ever realize," he says. Daniel's eyes went wide as he looked up. "That's what I do, really. Superheroes are what I draw. I even once drew him wearing a cloak." Angela covered her mouth as everyone in the room gasped. Theresa gave a strong nod. "You see? He is with you. He's right there saying, 'That's my boy,' every time you make someone laugh or make a line with your pencil." The family appeared to be carrying less weight by the end of the session, even though they were embracing each other and crying. They were remembering, getting back in touch, and starting to heal instead of only grieving. Theresa folded her hands and smiled softly. "Grief never goes away, honey. However, love is more resilient than death. You continue to be guided daily by the love of your father. Spirit is about enduring relationships rather than endings." The rain had stopped by the time the family left. It was as though Anthony himself was beaming down on them when the clouds parted and a ray of sunlight came through. "Another soul at peace, another family healing," Theresa said softly as she stood in the doorway. "I do what I do for that reason." But hushed expectation enveloped the modest community center hall on a calm Sunday afternoon in Long Island. The Long Island medium, Theresa Caputo, had met with dozens of people for a group reading. Nervous excitement permeated the air. Some attendees were cynical, some optimistic, and some were so overcome with grief that they could hardly sit down. The warmth of Theresa's familiar presence filled the audience as she entered the stage. She donned a dazzling necklace that caught the light, her trademark blonde hair pulled high, and a serene smile that somehow comforted even the most nervous people. But when she looked around the crowd, her energy changed. She stopped, put her palm on her chest, and inhaled deeply. Theresa pointed to a woman seated in the middle row and remarked, "I'm getting a very strong energy right here." As though she already knew it was about her, the woman's eyes widened. She trembled a little as she glanced down at her hands, unwilling to reject it but not ready to believe either. "Would you defend me, sweetheart?" Theresa inquired softly. Slowly, the woman stood up. Wearing a navy blue cardigan, she was in her late 40s, and the fatigue on her face betrayed someone who had suffered too much in too short a period of time. Theresa briefly closed her eyes. "I must inform you that two male figures are coming forward. One feels like a husband, the other like a father, and you are overwhelmed by the affection they are giving you." The woman covered her mouth in a gasp. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "Yes," she said in a whisper. "I lost both of them. My spouse was only 6 months ago, and my father was last year." There was silence in the room. Her words reverberated in every nook and cranny. Her grief was so painful that even people who didn't know her could feel it. Tears filled Theresa's own eyes. Her voice broke slightly as she covered her heart with her hand once more. "They're together, sweetheart. They're secure. They also tell me that you've been harboring guilt and wondering if there was anything you might have done differently. Is that logical?" Unable to control the tears that were pouring down her cheeks, the woman gave a fierce nod. "Each and every evening," she said. "With both of them. I'm constantly questioning whether I encouraged my dad to visit the doctor sooner while he was ill. Additionally, I relive my husband's accident every day. I believe I ought to have been present." Tears started streaming down Theresa's face. At that time, she was more than simply a medium. She was a mother, a daughter, and a person who knew what heartbreak was. Her voice was calm, yet tremulous, as she stepped closer to the woman. "They're saying that you should cease. They are demonstrating to me that they look out for you altogether. Even though you didn't think you did enough for him, your father says he's proud of the way you looked after him. Oh my God, your spouse is asking. Please tell her it wasn't her fault. He claims that you had no influence over the accident. He claims he won't allow you to carry that burden any longer because you've punished yourself enough." Her sobbing filled the silent room as the woman broke down. After leaving the stage, Theresa put her arms around her and held her close, much like she would if she were family. Theresa's mascara smudged a little as the tears streamed down her face, but she didn't mind. "You are not alone," she whispered into the woman's ear. "Both of them are present here with you." For a long time, the only sound in the room was the sobs of two ladies, one of whom was grieving and the other channeling the sorrow of ghosts beyond. Some audience members hugged one another, others whispered prayers, while others used tissues to dab at their eyes. Theresa finally withdrew, and she met the woman's gaze. "They're telling me that you've been scared to go on because you think that smiling or being joyful again will make you forget about them. The precise opposite, however, is what they want you to know. According to your father, he brought you up to live, not to brood. And your spouse thinks that living life to the fullest, laughing again, and falling in love when your heart is ready are the best gifts you could give him." With tears in her eyes, the woman nodded. She said, "I'm not sure if I can." Theresa squeezed her hand and said softly, "You can. And you will, since they're still there. They simply take on a new form now. They are there whenever you feel the warmth of the sun, listen to your favorite music, or have a nighttime dream. They will stay on your side forever." As if a weight she had been carrying for months had finally been removed, the woman sat back down, still crying but noticeably lighter. Theresa laughed softly as she wiped away her own tears. "You all think I don't cry, but hear me out. Even I can't contain my emotions when spirit shows me this type of love. I do what I do for this reason. This is the reason I'm here." Soft applause was given by the audience out of respect rather than amusement. They had just seen something holy, something personal. Many more spirits appeared before the end of the night, and Theresa conveyed innumerable messages of hope, healing, and love. The woman who had lost both her father and her husband, however, was the one reading that everyone in the room knew would live on in their hearts forever. The woman remained silently in her chair, clutching her chest where she imagined she could feel both of them, her husband and her father, standing right next to her as the crowd gradually filtered out into the cool night air. She let herself take a deep breath for the first time in months. She believed she had lost tranquility forever, yet with that breath, she felt it again. But it was one of those evenings when there seemed to be a lot of excitement in the theater. The seats were crowded with folks who had come to experience something more than a concert. The Long Island medium, Theresa Caputo, greeted the crowd as if they were family as she crossed the stage with her well-known warmth and enthusiasm. "I can't control who comes through. I can only deliver the messages the way Spirit gives them to me," she would always say. A young woman named Emily was sitting in the audience. Despite her initial resistance, her friends persuaded her to attend. Even though Emily was just 28, she had the kind of sadness that ages a person in a day. She had lost her husband, Michael, just 6 months prior on what should have been the happiest day of her life. She was still plagued by the memories every day. Everything about their wedding, including the dancing, vows, and flowers, had been flawless. During their first dance, she recalled Michael whispering in her ear, "This is just the beginning of forever." However, that eternity had only lasted a few hours. Michael had a sudden heart attack in their hotel suite that evening following the event. He was gone when the paramedics got there. Emily had never discussed that evening in public. Not even her closest pals were aware of the specifics. She only attended Theresa's presentation because she had a tiny question in the back of her mind. What if? What if I was actually reachable by Michael? What if I knew he was all right? Theresa abruptly stopped as she crossed the stage. As though spirit itself had drawn her attention, she pushed her hand to her chest and looked around the audience. "This young man of mine is here," Theresa uttered quietly. Does anyone here understand that he's telling me I didn't make it past my wedding night as he's showing me a tuxedo? The audience erupted in gasps. Emily's throat tightened with breath. Her entire body shook as if her shoulder had been touched by an unseen hand. She lifted her hand slowly, her eyes already burning with tears. Theresa approached her and said, "Oh, sweetheart. He's right here. He has been waiting for this moment and is incredibly strong and persistent." Emily tried to speak, but her mouth trembled. She muttered, That was my husband." Theresa gave a soft nod. "You were his best friend, he tells me." "She wasn't just my bride. She was my everything," he says again, and he wants me to express his gratitude for the most joyous day of his life. He claims that despite its briefness, it was ideal. He had never felt more cherished. Emily sobbed and covered her face with her hands. As every soul in the theater leaned in to hear what love sounded like from the other side, the whole theater seemed to become motionless. Theresa went on, "He apologizes all the time. He claims that he never intended to part from you in that manner. He continues to show me the flowers and the wedding cake before stating, 'I wanted a lifetime, but I only got hours.' Nevertheless, those hours were sufficient to confirm that she was my soulmate. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, lifting her tear-streaked face. "He insisted that everything was ideal during the day. He informed me that he was shocked to learn that I was his wife." Theresa gave a gentle smile. "When you speak to him at night, he can't hear you. Don't you occasionally sit with your wedding gown?" Emily took a sharp breath. "Indeed. Last week, I pulled it out of the closet. I simply sat with it in my hand. I believed I was insane." Theresa gave a hard shake of her head. "You're not insane. He was present. He claims that when he was sitting directly next to you, he clasped your hand and muttered, 'Don't cry for me, baby. I remain with you.'" Emily sobbed further, covering her mouth while the audience wiped away their tears. Theresa hesitated, her voice softly changing. "He wants you to know that he is content. He is not afraid or in agony. Tell her I never took it off," he continues, continuing to show me the gold ring. "One day, I'll wear it till she joins me here." With her wedding ring still hanging on a chain around her neck, Emily gripped her chest. She mumbled, "I wear mine every day." Theresa's tone softened. "He notices that. Don't stop living because of me," he adds. "I want you to chuckle once more. I want to see you dance once again. That's how you'll honor me." He claims that he'll be the one playing music for you on the radio, as well as placing small signs and reminders. He will also smile with you when you do. For the first time in months, a tiny grin trembled on Emily's lips as she nodded through her tears. She was moved by Theresa. That night was not the end of your husband's devotion. Love never dies. It simply changes shape. And know that it's him whenever you sense that unexpected warmth or believe you hear him in your ear. You're still Michael. You will always be your forever. The crowd exploded in cheers, not because they were amused, but rather because they were in awe at the connection between two souls and the idea that love could endure beyond death. Even though she was still in mourning, Emily felt lighter when she left that evening. She felt less alone in her suffering for the first time. She brought with her the idea that real love endures forever. And she said, "Thank you, Michael," as she gazed up at the starry sky. "I will continue to dance for you." She claimed to have felt the smallest, unnoticeable touch of a hand against her cheek at that very moment. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mina, and I hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video.